Hi, this is Brandon from TaToG Tech, back here again with another episode of Linux Sundays. All right, so welcome back to another episode in our series on learning Linux with TaToG. TaToG Tech. I wanted to go ahead and start off by kind of reintroducing what we're covering here. Again, we're going to be utilizing Ryan's tutorials as our framework for learning this season of this series. This series will be composed of 2 seasons. Let me just go ahead and bring that up and let you just kind of see it real quick. Here we go. This is Ryan's Tutorials. You can go to ryanstutorials.net or just Google Ryan's Tutorials, and then you'll want to go ahead and look for the one based on Linux. Now, we're not going to be doing a verbatim repeat of the information because clearly you can just go to the website and actually read the information that's on there, but we're going to be using it as a guide to kind of get through this first season of this series because it's a really concise introduction. It gives you really simple introduction. Learning the command line can be very, very intimidating for a lot of people, even folks who are experienced in tech. I have friends that work in tech, and not all of them feel comfortable around the command line. They would prefer to work within the graphical user interface or GUI. So we're gonna spend quite a bit of time in this series out of our comfort zone. A lot of folks, when they start thinking of working in a terminal or on the command line, they think, oh, automatically a hacker. Or I know when I first kind of got the idea of working in a terminal, I really thought of like the old school computer users. I just remember being a kid, and a lot of the stuff that they would do as far as advanced features would be in the actual command prompt inside of Windows. I didn't really have any kind of concept of Linux at that time, but that was something I experienced. I had a stepfather who was in IT, so that's kind of where my reference point was. But a lot of people associate it with hackers, and honestly, it's really not just hackers who use it. It's anybody who really wants the advanced functionality of utilizing that command line provides you with. And keep in mind that I'm going to be learning right along with you. So there's going to be some rawness to these series, and I really appreciate your patience with my learning these processes, as well as teaching them along the way. So now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the introduction to the Linux command line. Now, there's really 4 things that I'm going to be covering today, really as far as like the vocabulary or, the items. We're going to be looking at a terminal, shell, command line, and a command prompt or just a prompt will be the things that I cover in this video today. Now, the first thing that we want to go ahead and do is we're here in the virtual machine that we created in our initial episode in our Ubuntu 20.04 machine. Now, there's a couple of different ways in this particular machine. It's going to vary by distribution, so just see which distribution that you're utilizing and see what the hotkeys are. You can do a quick Google search. You can do it through the settings typically as well. But with this particular Ubuntu-based distribution, it is going to be Control-Alt-T to bring up our terminal. All right, there it is. You could also just do it through your menu here. Go to System Tool and Qt Terminal. Now you can customize the version that you're using. You can also install different types of terminals. The one that I particularly like to use is Terminator. It allows you to really efficiently work in multiple terminals at a time, and as you become a more advanced user, you will find yourself working in more than one terminal at a time. So that's why I like to utilize that. Typically, I'm not a very experienced user at this point, so I typically am only using 2 at the most. Sometimes I run into more depending on what I'm doing. But I'll have the one I'm primarily in, and then usually the second one's for like man pages, and things like that. But that's going to be up to yourself. That's not something that's going to be covered here. All the different types. I just wanted to share my experience with what I use. So, all right. So here is our terminal, and really you'll hear terms like the terminal and the shell and command line being used relatively interchangeably, but they really have distinct meanings from one another, and they're not necessarily going to be the same thing. Now, this right here is a terminal, and really what a terminal is it's a place where you actually type your input and receive the output from. It's the way that you interact with the system. So, as it stands alone, a terminal does not understand the commands. So if you were to type in, something as simple as ls, and if there's no underlining shell or, interpretive or language program, it's not going to know how to, it's going to say no, it's going to give you some kind of error. I don't have an example of that, but if we are to run, just say the list command, which is ls, the shell that we're using on this particular particular distribution knows that you can actually interpret it as being this command, and this command means that we need to get this type of response back when this command is input. So that leads into the shell. Now, the shell is actually going to determine how the terminal looks and behaves. This will determine how the terminal will interpret the input. Many different types. There's many different types of shells out there. These include the born again shell, which is one of the more common ones. TCSH shell, KSH shell, ZSH shell, and fish shell, which stands for friendly interactive shell. The one that is the most common, again, is the born again shell, which is also known as bash. And it is the one that is used in Lubuntu. Now, as far as the command line goes, the actual command line is this space right here. This right here is your command line. This is going to be the place where you're actually typing in the commands. So I can see we can start to see why these terms are used interchangeably, but again, they're not necessarily going to mean the same thing. So you want to make sure that it's okay to use them if you're within, tech circles and things like that, and people understand that there's a difference. But if not, people can get on different pages when discussing different topics if they don't have a complete understanding of the difference between these. Now, the last thing that I kind of want to point out is the prompt. Now, our prompt is this right here, which is Brandon at Brandon-VirtualBox for this particular machine. And really, it's just going to be it depends on the distribution and how you have it configured. A lot of your terminals will allow you to configure this command prompt, and it will allow you to have different information there. There's tons of different configurations. We're not going to get into that in this particular video. So if you want to go ahead, that's probably something I will cover in a future video, but if you want to go ahead and do more research, then Google it. As I've stated in previous videos, Google is going to be your best friend when it comes to these types of things. Now, as I was putting all of this together, I did forget one piece of information in my notes. And I'm just going to ahead and I'm actually doing a Google search as we speak on another monitor, just so I can go ahead and see which, I want to show you the command that will allow you to see which shell it is that you're working in. Now, with this particular distribution, we should be able to use echo $0. And there we go. That tells us what which shell we're actually using here. If that was anything different, you would see it there. So if you're using a different type of distribution, it'll show you which shell you are using. All right. So this week's episode is a pretty short one. We're not covering an extensive topic, and again, this season is all about it being more of a top level overview of Linux. So I really appreciate you stopping by to watch my video, and look out for more videos in this series. If you like the content that I'm making here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you like this particular video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. Let me know what you thought about the video in the comments, or just stop by and say hi. I appreciate you watching my video, and have a great rest of the day.